It's a fascinating day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Another batch of destroyed Magic cards has shown up and has brought with it some March of the Machine spoilers, with even a little bit of Lord of the Rings sprinkled in on top. And in addition to that, Hasbro seems to be crumbling even further as its stock price marches ever downwards.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The magic historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for, as I said, a fascinating installment of Mega Magic News. This new bundle of bashed up cards and spoilers is a lot of fun. But before we dive into that, I want to talk about what's going on with Hasbro because things continue to get worse. Their share price is crumbling lower and lower. If I'm not mistaken, it may be at a 5-year low. It is getting down into the 40s, right? And when you look at things, it looks pretty grim. Hasbro has just been getting elbow dropped. In the most recent financial reports they did, they reported basically a loss of $130 million for the fourth quarter, right? And then you have this compared to the previous fourth quarter results where they were up 80 million. So they went from plus 80 to minus basically $130 million in the course of 1 year. It looks like the big fat boost from the pandemic, all that money that was being tossed around, plus people being stuck at home with their kids going, buy them a little fire engine or something to shut them up. I don't know, get them a transformer. Whatever it was, it boosted Hasbro's bottom line. And you can see that, like, when you compare it to other people in the same kind of industry roughly, like take, for example, Mattel. Mattel is also getting slapped around, but the amount that it's happening to them, if you look at it over the course of about a year, Mattel is down about 25%. Hasbro's down 43%, and they're leaning so heavily on Magic the Gathering. And Magic the Gathering, let's be real, it's been exploited about as far as they can push it. How much higher can the prices go regularly, right? They can't just keep slapping on more and more price increases and more products. There is an outer limit. Now, obviously, we're going to see them push harder against that outer limit because Hasbro needs the money. But I genuinely believe that we're starting to reach the actual threshold of the ceiling to where Magic can go for now. We can't really count Magic 30 because it's a different beast, right? That is a special sort of insanity that isn't like normal products. But I feel like the Double Masters Commander style scenario where we have Commander Masters, this is starting to get to the upper heights. I don't think that Wizards can push this much further with that, right? When you combine it with the missteps they've made with Dungeons and Dragons, there's not as much growth available left in Magic the Gathering. Hasbro is really kind of bereft of a lot of other properties that can do a lot for them. So things are going to get pretty wild. It could go one of two ways. Magic could get way worse as they just go, okay, we got to find other ways to squeeze money. Let's cut down on the cost to produce it. Let's cut down on development costs. Let's start hiring cheaper artists. Like they could underneath it start just pulling out more expensive things while trying to make it look the same. And in the short term, that works just fine. But we've seen that Wizard's strategy has shifted over the last 5 years, and Hasbro desperately needs the money from them. So they have to make changes, and it can go one way or the other, where we go, okay, we're going to go hyper crazy and then crash right out, or it might start to ratchet up and they go, okay, we can actually find a balance here and pull it back. Admittedly, I think they're just going to go full tilt and it's going to get crazier from here, right? So the Hasbro news out of the way. Let's talk about what's going on with this crazy new leak situation. I'm going to put some images up on the screen for you here. These are destroyed Magic cards. Soak it in. Feels kind of familiar, doesn't it? You might be looking at it going, wait a minute. didn't we just do this with this garbage dump scenario? Well, actually, this is a different beast. This is not out in a landfill. This is actually in a recycling facility. So, unlike that other stuff we saw that appeared to be completed product that was dumped, it's already in its booster packaging, like ready to go to the consumer, whatever it is that happened to that stuff, this is actually a bunch of cards that didn't make the quality standards. Think about that for a second. Wizards of the Coast does have a quality department. You think, oh, you know what, they're not really doing anything about the quality. That's why I keep getting all these bad cards. There are a bunch of cards that are so bad that Wizards of the Coast is throwing them away. The original test sheets and stuff like that. I guess it must just be the original test sheets. I don't know how much actual poorly made product they throw away, because it seems like a ton of it ends up in our hands. I was originally going to collect a set of Brothers War and a foil set of Brothers War. And when I went over my foils yesterday, I realized that so many of the foils came out of the package all chipped and damaged around the edges that I just said, you know what? If you're not going to put in a level of care for your product, I'm not going to collect the foil set. So I've downgraded to collecting a regular set. I'm a little still cheesed off about it, for real, because like the quality is an issue. They charge a lot of money for these products. So to see, in one way, it kind of tweaks me to see this many cards being destroyed for quality when so many more make it through. It's like, if you can catch these, why are you not catching the others? But regardless of that aspect of it, there are some fun little secrets about the upcoming set, some spoiler aspects that are buried in here. Now, the meatiest piece that we have is this green card. Now, you may think to yourself, looking at this, what can you possibly learn from one card fragment? And the answer is a lot. And this isn't the only card fragment that we have to go on. This is just the most visually striking one that tells us storyline spoiler information as well. So we have a translation of what you can see on the card. This is obviously a green enchant. Well, it's not obvious it's an enchantment, but it's a green card that is an enchantment. It enchants a legendary creature, and it has Leyline in the name. So this right here is curious to begin with. We have an enchantment that can only go on legendary creatures. It's got to have a decent level of power. It is theoretical that it could go on any legendary permanent, but it is most likely specifically for a legendary creature. The Leyline concept, I mean, it's a green card, right? So tapping into the ley lines of a world. But the story aspect of it, when we take a look at this, this is most likely a card from March of the Machines. We can't see the collector number or anything like that, but the majority of what we see in here is from March of the Machines. So take a look at the artwork. It's pretty obvious who we're looking at, right? That's Nissa. But here's the thing, Nissa looks a lot different than the last time we saw her. You may recall that the last time we saw Nissa was when she had 4 arms in the service of Elish Norn. One of her arms was her old staff, right? So what are we looking at here? Well, we're looking at a Nissa that's no longer a Phyrexian planeswalker. So we know that planeswalkers can be uncompleted. This was already theorized in the past, but this, as far as I'm concerned, is proof that planeswalkers can be uncompleted. But here's where it gets really crazy, friends. If you have not realized the implications yet of what this uncompletion does, Nissa no longer has her spark, right? If this is an enchant legendary creature, which is what the translation looks like it says, that means that Nissa has to be a creature and not a planeswalker. And to be a creature and not a planeswalker, that means she has to no longer have a planeswalker spark. So this probably means that we are going to see all of the planeswalkers that were completed returned in an incomplete form. So March of the Machines is going to be Phyrexia's taking over of the multiverse, plus it's untaking over the multiverse, basically, where they take control of a whole bunch of stuff and then everybody fights back and is like, no, we are the champions, and ousts the Phyrexian menace. That's the idea that it's looking like. So as a result, all these planeswalkers get uncompleted and they lose their sparks. You remember well, maybe you remember if you've heard it in previous videos. I've talked about how Wizards of the Coast is most likely angling to deprioritize planeswalkers in Magic, right? We've seen a scenario where, based on Wizards' own research, 75% of Magic players have no clue what a planeswalker actually is. And they use planeswalkers as their biggest marketing point, right? Well, up until recently, where things have shifted specifically into focusing on Commander. So now that we're focused on Commander, Wizards is making a million things for Commander, and this means legendary creatures are way more important than planeswalkers. I wasn't expecting them to actually turn the planeswalkers into legendary creatures. I thought they were going to throw planeswalkers off to the side, basically de-emphasize them, and then go, here we go, legendary creature. But it makes sense to me for them to actually go, no, people love these planeswalkers. Why don't we just turn them into legendary creatures so they can use them as their commanders now, and then we can just take them everywhere. We're moving into a new era of Magic the Gathering, where planeswalkers aren't the way you get around the multiverse anymore. We're going to have things like the Realm Breaker tree and stuff like that. It's going to be way easier for you to go from one plane to another. And so as a result, we're going to go on adventures following different legendary characters, right? And this ties perfectly into this theme, as we see Nissa is no longer a planeswalker. So that fits in great. Now, there are other aspects of this as well, right? We have something in regards to Lord of the Rings, and that is that the ring itself, the One Ring, may not actually be a Magic card. It may just be a side token or emblem. So you may recall when we saw the spoilers for Frodo, how he gets tempted by the ring. It would make sense that the ring is going to tempt you. Maybe there's a card that's called the Ring's Temptation. Maybe there's actually a physical card and a card called Ring's Temptation, because again, the fragments that we're dealing with are super small in some cases. Actually, you know what? For a laugh, let me show you some of the pictures that people separated out to go, check it out. I used this to find out additional information. And I stared at it and I went, I cannot make any odds or ends of this. I do not know what I'm looking at. This is okay. So good on you for being able to like parse this out. You should be working for some crazy forensics team or something out there, because it's absolutely wild. How are you supposed to make anything out from this, right? But regardless, people are pulling out little translations, little snippets of information, all kinds of little corner pieces. It's great. It's like a big old CSI squad. Everybody get in there and investigate. It's so crazy. So, returning back to the March of the Machine stuff, because there is more. There's going to be a legendary instant, which I don't really understand, like the legendary spell thing. I guess like is it going to be like you can only play one? We had them back in the Kamigawa days where they had like legendary spells that were like, once you cast them, you're done casting spells for the rest of the game or whatever. So how do you do a legendary instant? Is it actually going to feel legendary where you can only play it once per game? Is it just going to be, it's got legendary in the name so that spells that say when you cast a legend spell, or like, you know what I mean? Cards that say draw a card whenever you cast a legend would trigger for that. Is it making legendary a more commonplace sort of thing? Or are we getting epic new instant style craziness, right? There's multiple ways to go with that. Now, I saved battle cards for last. There's not a lot about the battle cards, but there is this image, which has a couple of interesting parts to it. First of all, is the crazy little arrow symbol that looks like a play button on there, right? Normally, when we have double face cards, because the battle cards from March of the Machines are going to be double faced cards. There's one in every pack. So the double face cards have these little arrows on them to let you know, yo, go ahead and flip it. But the placement of this arrow card is very strange. You know what I mean? Normally when we get the arrow cards, they are up at the top of the card along with the card's name. They're not tucked down here at the bottom along the side. So it's a very interesting choice. Now, that might mean that perhaps these show up on the battlefield in a different alignment. It might just be a way to make the battle cards stand out more. There may actually be multiple of these indicators on the card along the side, because we only have the smallest scrap, but I feed on the tiniest of scraps, friends. So there's another detail we can pull of interest from this, and that is the collector number. If you take a look, it's actually 4 digits. It starts with a 0, which makes you think, yo, is there going to be over 1,000 cards in this set? The answer to that is no. It's already been confirmed that those numbers aren't because the set is going to go up into 1,000 cards. We weren't told specifically why those numbers go up that high, but it's theorized that it could be because of secret layers, right? We've got so many different secret layers. The secret layer collector numbers are getting up there, so they might have just made that to account and adjust for them. Or we might be looking at some sets in the future where we have crazy amounts of cards, because remember, in all these sets now, Wizards seems to be like, in the Brothers War you had the retro artifact extra stuff. We're getting something like that again with March of the Machines, with the legendary classics or something like that. I don't remember exactly. Multiversal Legends. I can't keep the names of these things straight because they make a billion different things at once now. But anyhow, that wraps up all of the news we have for today. Thanks for coming by, my friends. Big shout out to all my patrons, and I'll be live streaming on my other channel later today if you want to come by and hang out. See ya later.